welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. Today we are so excited to be introducing two products, our Foxy Family dies and also our Skinny Stripes Stencils. So let's go ahead and check them out. First up, we're going to take a look at our Foxy Family dies, and these dies are the latest in the series of our paper piecing style dies, similar to our Springtime Bunny or Garden Gnome. And I love that there are two different sizes of foxes in this set. So we're going to be using double-sided adhesive sheets to help create these really cute foxes, and this is my favorite thing to use for paper piecing style dies. So what you do is you just peel up the liner paper on the adhesive sheet, and you're just going to attach it to some cardstock. We're using some black cardstock here. Then we're going to take the base pieces of our Foxy Family dies. These are the ones that are just flat. They don't have any of the detail on them. And we're going to die cut this black cardstock that has the double-sided adhesive sheet on that. And we're effectively making a sticker this way. The next thing we're going to do is take out the frame style dies. These are ones with all the detail. And we're going to die cut a bunch of different colors of cardstock. We have black, ballet slippers, canned pumpkin, and white cardstock. And this is going to fill in the little puzzle pieces of our cute foxes. So we're going to start off by peeling up that adhesive, and now we have this full sticker in the shape of the fox. Then we're going to take our frame ones that we die cut out of that same black cardstock, and we're going to go ahead and just pop out all the little interior pieces so that we're only left with the frame. And then we're going to line up that frame with the base piece just like this. And because we use the double-sided adhesive, you can easily just attach that right down. Then we'll attach the little frame outline piece of the baby fox. And the little frame outline piece, I kind of see that the same as when I stamp a stamped image. That's going to give you your stamped lines. And all of these different colors of foxes are going to be similar to using markers or colored pencils, etc., to color in your stamped images. So first we're going to start off by using white cardstock, and we're going to do the little end of his tail and the face pieces. Then we'll do the same thing for the little baby fox, and I'm going to save those white frames because I really like using a white frame with these foxes as well, so I can save those and use them for another project. So now that we've added all those detail, we're going to start working on the bodies of the foxes, and we're using some canned pumpkin colored cardstock for these. And we're just going to take these pieces and pop them right in. And it feels almost like a little puzzle, and I have to tell you, for some reason I find this very relaxing. Like, I just love it. So a fun way to add your pieces in is if they've stayed in the frame, you can just layer that frame right on top and pop the pieces through with a little pokey tool. And so that makes it really easy to add all the pieces. So here we have our fox. We're going to add some of the larger pieces, just kind of fitting them right in there. We've got the tail and the top of the fox and his body. But then for the little leg pieces that are smaller, we're going to take the frame, layer it right on top, use that pokey tool and just poke those two pieces through, and it's going to attach right onto the adhesive and fill in the little legs of the fox. Then for the inside of the ears, we're going to use this really pretty ballet slippers pink color, and we're just going to put those little ears in. Now, there's the little tiny fox eyes that we had when we cut the black frame. So we're just going to poke those through in the same way, lining up the piece right over top and using the pokey tool to poke them right through. And that makes it easier than trying to kind of handle a tiny little piece. So right there, you'll see we're just going to poke them right through. And now our big fox is all done. And the next thing we need to do is do the same thing for the eyes of the smaller fox. So we're going to take that piece and then just poke the little eyes of that guy right through, and that's going to fill in those pieces. And oh my goodness, they just turn out so cute. They are so much fun to put on cards, and we're going to be making two cards with these foxes in just a little bit. But first up, I wanted to take a quick look at our awesome Skinny Stripe stencils. There are two different stencils in the Skinny Stripes. We have both a diagonal and either a horizontal or a vertical. So I love that you can get a lot of different looks with these Skinny Stripe stencils. So here you can see you can just flip that one over and you're going to have some vertical lines. You can also take the diagonal one and rotate it and have diagonal lines that go in the other direction. So first, let's take a look at the diagonal stripe. We're just going to put this over top a little standard size piece of cardstock that's 5.5 by 4.25, and we're just going to ink up these stripes. And right now we're using some merman, but I just love being able to create any stripe that I need to match my card. Sometimes I just love a stripe pattern on the card base of my card and then having a little scene on top, and it's so nice to be able to customize the stripes to match exactly what I'm doing. So we're just going to ink that right up with the merman cardstock, and then we can lift up the stencil, and you'll see we have this beautiful diagonal stripe. Next, we're going to take a look at the other stencil, which is the vertical and or horizontal. And what I love about this stencil is you can do it on portrait or landscape, same as the diagonal, and vertical or horizontal. So you can get a lot of different looks. You can even overlayer these and create like a cool little checkered pattern as well. So there's a lot you can do with it. And then here is a look at those vertical stripes or horizontal stripes. So it's horizontal in a portrait and vertical on a landscape. Now, next up, we're just going to go ahead and do these horizontal lines on a landscape card just so you can see the different looks that you can get with it. So we're going to line that right up and then ink it up just like we did before. And now we have these beautiful horizontal stripes on a landscape card. And then here is a comparison between the different styles that we did: horizontal, vertical, diagonal, landscape, portrait. There's so many cool things that you can do. And we're going to be creating a card with these in just a little bit with a cool rainbow look. And then Shari is going to be combining the stripes with our awesome Foxy family. But first up, we're going to recreate a gorgeous card by Grace using the Foxy family. So let's check that out. So at the beginning of the video, we used colored cardstock with our cute foxes, but this time to add the detail, we're actually going to be using some markers on white cardstock. So what I did here was take a cute little fox there, the frame piece, and we die cut that from white cardstock. Then what I did was take all the pieces and just attached it to a full stick Post-it. And the reason I did this was just to help keep all the pieces together to make it easier to add some color to this cute little fox. Now here you'll see that I have a whole lot of markers out. I don't normally do so many markers, but a couple of my markers were kind of running out of ink and I was just trying to make it work. So I did a whole bunch of combos here, but you really could just stick to the YRs or the E17s and it would look really awesome for the fox, but I was just having fun with my markers. So you'll see I add the darkest, then I medium, and then kind of a lighter medium, then I go out into light, and it's going to end up looking so cool. Now I'm going to be replacing the frame part, so I'm not worrying about getting marker on that white frame because we're going to be using some colored cardstock for that. So what's nice about that is you don't have to worry too much about how perfect you are with your markers. We're going to use the same idea with our cute little baby fox, just coloring him in with all of these different markers. Now there you see I colored in his nose. At the beginning, because we used black cardstock as the frame, we didn't need to add any color to his nose, but with a white frame, you just need to add a little bit of a dark gray or black marker to give him a cute little nose on the frame. So I went ahead and did that, but you'll see I end up having to do it again later because, of course, I'm going to replace the frame, but I kind of forgot as I was doing all the details. Now, one last step is to color in the little eye shapes. So what I'm doing is just removing the face pieces just so that I don't get some dark gray marker on them by mistake. And then I'm just going to color right over the little eye with that W7 marker. Because he's a really soft colored fox, I decided to use more of a light gray instead of black, and I thought it would just kind of blend in more with the coloring. But you could also just use some black cardstock and die cut another frame and use the little eye pieces from that too. Next, we're going to build the frame of our paper piecing puzzle. So we're going to put those pieces aside, and then we're going to die cut the frame pieces from some paper bag cardstock, and that's going to end up being the actual color of our frame. And I always love to cut the base out of the same cardstock. So that's some paper bag cardstock, and then here I have another double-sided adhesive sheet, and I just put my two dies out just to give me a guide of how much of this sheet I need to use, and I just trimmed out the exact piece that I need. Then you can peel up the liner paper and attach that down to the cardstock, effectively creating a really cool cardstock sticker. Then we can take our base pieces, which are the ones that don't have all of those little frame details, and we'll run that through the die cut machine, and we'll have some cute little foxy stickers. Now here's where you'll see me realize, oh gosh, where I really need to add that little nose detail is onto the frame pieces I'm actually going to use. So I'm going to use that same dark gray marker and just add a cute little nose. And really it doesn't need to be perfect. It's going to look good no matter what. So I just color in a tiny little nose on both the big fox and the small fox. And then we're going to peel up the liner paper on those base pieces. And then we can layer those frames on top. So I'm just going to pop off those extra pieces. The cool thing is I could save those pieces and use them for a different fox. So it's always nice maybe to grab a little Ziploc and you can save all your extra little fox pieces and create lots of foxes ready to put on cards. So you'll see I'm carefully lining that up and attaching that down into the adhesive. And now I can take all those pieces that we colored in with markers earlier and start to pop them into the puzzle. And you'll see that when you color these in with markers, it adds a ton of detail. Now, another way to add detail, if you wanted to not do so much work for coloring in these pieces, is you could take the colored cardstock and just ink the edges of it just a little bit with some ink, and that's going to give it a really cool gradient look and add a ton of dimension too. So that's a quick and easy way to get this really cool gradient look on your foxes without using markers or colored pencils or watercolor. And all of the ways look amazing. Now this little fox is looking so cute. We're going to drop in his cute little smiley eyes, and then we'll be able to work on his cute little tiny baby fox. So we're going to repeat the same thing. We're going to peel up the liner paper on the fox, we're going to attach that cute little frame, and then we're going to pop in all of those little pieces that we colored earlier. So here we'll see the little fox just kind of starts to form, and it really is so much fun to pop these little pieces in and see that little guy just come to life. Now, one of the things that I loved about Grace's card was that she brought back an oldie but a goodie favorite die of mine, and that is our Lift the Flat Meadow, and it has this adorable tree stump in it. So I went ahead and die cut that out of some white cardstock, and we're going to use Copic markers to add the color to this one as well, because I want it to kind of coordinate and really match with the foxes. So I'm using some E70 markers here, and I'm just kind of going around the edges, the little stitching, and adding some detail with the markers. I started really light and then built the color up because I wasn't sure how dark I wanted the tree stump to be, but I realized it was too light and then just kind of kept stepping up my markers until it looked perfect. Then I'm going to use the glue tube to add a bit of liquid glue to the top of this tree stump, and we're just going to layer that right on there. And once again, I'm just going to go through and add a little bit more shadowing with my darker marker after layering that piece on top, just to make sure everything matches really nicely. Now, this little tree stump has a really cute little opening that opens up, and so I love Grace put a little heart in there, so we're going to work on that. So I went ahead and just cut a little random piece of scrap cardstock to layer behind it. I'm going to take a heart from the Very Special stamp set, any heart would do, and I'm just going to stamp that in some Crunchy Leaf ink, which is a Copic friendly ink that is a brown color, just to go along with our brown tree stump. So I'm going to color that heart in, and then I'm just going to go around and kind of mimic the lines of the tree stump, and then just kind of color right over them, and that's going to be the inside of the tree stump. So I colored right over it, and then you'll see I lost some of the detail, so I went back in with a darker marker and just added a little bit more detail to the heart, and then to all of those rings around the center. Then we'll add some liquid glue behind the tree stump, and we can layer our little piece with the heart right behind. And what I love about this is that when you open and close the front of that tree stump, you get that cute little heart. It's just a fun extra little detail. Now, for the rest of this card, we're going to be using the Spring Flowers backdrop, and this is just one of my favorite dies. It's so pretty, and this card was definitely a labor of love, but my goodness, it was so much fun to make. So because we want these flowers to also coordinate with our foxes and our tree stump, we're going to be using some Copic markers to add color to all of these flowers. And we're going to be using some pretty shades of purple and pink and yellow. And this is such a fun way to add detail to these cute flowers. As I add color to each flower, what I do is take my darker marker and I go out from the center of the flower, add a little bit of that dark marker, and then blend it out with the lightest marker. At the center of each flower, I'm leaving it white, and at the very center, I use my darkest marker and add the little dot right in the center, and it just looks so pretty. Once again, I just love this card by Grace. It was so much fun to recreate, and it really is fun to take a look at your friends' creations and cards, and sometimes if you love something, you know what, you can make something just like it, and I just have so much fun recreating the beautiful cards by the design team, so thank you so much everyone on the team. So here you'll see I'm adding another shade of blue violet versus the more reddish violet of the other flower, and we're just going to keep blending all of these out. Next, we're going to bring in a red violet, so a really nice pinky color, and we're going to add color to the tulips and to those little kind of like clovery looking flowers. Those look really cute and just green as well, and it's also really fun to add color to the ends of those and then fill in the little stems with green. So now I'll continue to add the cute little pink flowers in, and then for the green we're going to be using just the basic greens. I usually use the yellow greens, but I've been really liking just the G's lately, and you'll see just how pretty these soft greens look with these kind of pastel colors. This is just such a fun way to add detail to the spring flowers backdrop. We're going to color one last flower on the frame, and this is all done and it's looking so pretty. So next up, we're going to do some inking and stamping, but I'm actually going to do my stamping first because sometimes I feel like when I try to stamp over the Distress Oxide inks, it kind of smears a little bit. So I thought if I did my stamping first, that would be great. So I'm going to be using a lot of pieces as a guide and then moving them out of the way to make sure I don't get ink on them. So here is the Scripty Mom die, and we're going to be using this. This is going to be a Mother's Day card, and then we're also going to layer on all of our little Foxy pieces. Then we're going to take out the Berry Special stamp set, and it has a little phrase that says, "You are special," and we're going to be stamping that underneath Mom. So now that I've got it in perfect placement, I can pick it up with my Misty tool. I'm going to move everything else out of the way, and then we're going to ink it up with some dough ink, which is a brown ink that's going to match really, really nicely with our little fox frames. And then we can do our inking. So this is some cracked pistachio ink, which is really going to coordinate with those really pretty green leaves that we were coloring on that spring flowers backdrop. So we're going to just ink the edges, and the edges are going to be darker, and then it's going to kind of fade out into nothing in the center. And so this can be a little bit messy. I think it actually looks really cool when it's just a little bit kind of messy and splotchy because it really gives a cool sky detail to this whole card. We're going to be using the Scripty Mom die for our beautiful Mother's Day card. So we're going to die cut that out of this really pretty sparkle cardstock in this great yellow, and then out of some white cardstock. And we're going to be layering those with a little bit of an offset to give it some shadow. So I'm just going to take that yellow one and just shift it a little bit to the right, and you'll see it's going to give it a really nice shadow that'll help it pop from that busy background with all the flowers in our cute scene. Then what we're going to do is take the backdrop and just add some tape runner all around the back of it because we're going to be layering the foxes kind of in among the flowers. So we'll add some tape runner to the back of that, and then we're going to add some tape runner to the back of the big mama fox. Then what I'm going to do is take the fox, and you'll see we're going to kind of tuck it in and around the flowers, and that's what's really going to make it look like this little mama fox is hanging out in a flower garden. We'll then attach that whole frame onto our base piece that we ink blended, and we can start to add the rest into the scene. So we're going to add that tree stump right on top of the flowers, and then we're going to take our little baby fox and kind of tuck him behind a couple of the flowers, and then right there next to Mom. Then we're going to add our Scripty Mom there, so it's going to say, "Mom, you are special." And then we're going to add another little flower into the hair of the mama fox. So I went ahead and used those red-violet colors to color in the flower, added a little flower center, and that flower is in the spring flowers backdrop, and then put it kind of tucked behind her ear on the little mama fox. Now I'm going to take those same red-violet markers, and I'm just scribbling onto some cardstock, and then these are some heart dies from the Hearts and Stars Skinny tag, and I'm going to cut out some hearts that are going to be perfectly matched to the card because I used the same markers for them. And so we're going to add these cute little hearts into the scene with some liquid glue, and we're just going to add one more tiny little heart. And I love those hearts and stars because I love that you get so many different sizes and you can cut a whole bunch of them at once. Now here we're going to add a few little white gel pen details to the foxes just to help them stand out from the scene, and you can see as we add those little details it really just gives them a cool three-dimensional look. Then we're going to add some tape runner to a standard size card base at 5.5 by 4.25. We can layer our whole scene on top. And then for a little sparkle for Mom, we're going to take out the sparkle glaze, and I'm going to add a little bit of that glaze to the center of each flower, and I'm really kind of building it up so that it's three-dimensional, so there'll be like this really 3D pop in each center of the flower. And then we'll add a little bit of the glitter as well to the little flower in the fox's ear there. And now the card is all done. It's so sparkly and so pretty. You have that little heart behind the tree stump, and oh my goodness, it just makes me smile. I love this card so much. Next, we're going to be recreating a really beautiful skinny striped stencil card by Mindy, and then after that, Shari is going to put these two things together in a way that's so gorgeous. So first up, we're going to take a standard size card piece here, 5.5 by 4.25, and we're going to take our skinny striped stencil. We sprayed the back of the stencil with some of that pixie spray to help it adhere really, really nice since we're going to be using a lot of colors over top. The pixie spray just kind of gives it a little tackiness. It just helps it stay a little bit better on the cardstock, and then we're also going to use the magnets to hold it in place. And then we're going to be creating this really great rainbow using lawnfawn ink. So we've got our bubblegum ink for the pink at the top, and then we're going to be using some lobster ink for the red, and then we'll use some carrot for the orange. And as we bring on each color, we're going to be careful to overlap each of the colors just a little bit. Then we're going to bring some lemonade in for the yellow, filling in those stripes, once again overlapping that orange just a bit. Jalapeno for the green, and we're going to ink that all up. And of course, as we get to the center, we've got to ink up a little bit more, right? Because our stripes are getting longer. And then we're going to move on to some beautiful merman for the kind of turquoisey color. I think this might be my very favorite ink color. It's so pretty. Then for the blue, we're going to use fish tank, once again overlapping these colors. And then for the purple, we're going to use sugarplum. Now, we're going to go back through these colors to make sure everything is blended really well. So we're going to go back and forth where the colors meet and just make sure there's a nice blend. So now we're bringing that yellow back and just blending it between the green and the orange, etc., until everything looks really well blended and really great. And oh my goodness, this is looking gorgeous. And then we're going to have the big reveal, which is the best part, especially with this stripe stencil. I feel like it's a little hard to see what it's going to look like, and then you lift it up, and isn't that gorgeous? Oh, I love it so much. We're going to take this panel and add it to a standard size card base at 5.5 by 4.25, and then we're going to take out that spring flowers backdrop again, and we're going to die cut it from white cardstock, but this time we're going to leave it completely white, which is a really cool way to use this backdrop. And we're going to add some foam strips all around the edges to give it some nice pop. That way it looks like the rainbow is kind of like a little shadow behind these really cool flowers. And I just love how Mindy did this, how she had the white flowers with the rainbow behind it. It's just so pretty. So we're going to layer that on top, and we're also going to make this a Mother's Day card because Mother's Day is coming up pretty quick here. It's early this year. So we're going to take out the Happy, Happy, Happy set. And I love this set because it has a ton of occasions and a bunch of happy words that you can die cut. So we stamped and die cut one of them, and then now we're going to do some heat embossing. So we're going to prep some black cardstock with an anti-static powder tool. We're going to stamp Mother's Day in some clear embossing ink. We're going to sprinkle on some white heat embossing powder. We'll tap off the excess, and then we're going to heat it with a heat tool, and we're going to have a nice bright white shiny sentiment. Then what we're going to do is take some scissors to trim this out. So we're just going to trim right along the Mother's Day so that it's a nice little rectangle right along. And to get nice straight cuts, it's really nice to use big scissors like these, but you can just line them up and then just snip. So we're just going to trim a little bit closer to the word. Then we're going to add some foam squares to the back of both of these pieces. We're going to use the little micro foam squares for the back of the happy, and then a foam strip for the back of the Mother's Day. Then we can take these two pieces and layer it in the center of the card. Now, one of the things I love about this card design is that you could have happy, and you could do happy birthday, happy Mother's Day. You could have all sorts of different phrases. It could be a thank you, a thinking of you. This card design is so pretty. You could also change the stripes and have it be a gradient of pinks or blues instead of rainbow. So there's a lot that you can do with it, and the card is just so cute. Next up, Shari is going to combine our cute foxes with the stripes and do a really cool kind of stenciling technique. So take it away, Shari.
So I'm starting my card today using the Foxy Family dies, and I'm going to be cutting these from some brown cardstocks. So I'm using kraft cardstock as my main color for my fox, and then I'm also going to use this piece of kraft cardstock as the solid base. So I'm putting a sheet of the double-sided adhesive sheet on there so I can cut out those solid pieces and have adhesive all over that piece. So again, I'll use this piece for my solid pieces and that kraft piece for my foxes. So I've cut out those two backer pieces with the double-sided adhesive, and then I'm going to cut out the foxes from kraft. I'm also cutting them from some paper bag cardstock. This is going to be the outline, which is a darker brown. And I'll just start to assemble these as I cut my colors of cardstock. So I've pulled that liner paper off my double-sided adhesive, and you can see it's shiny all over, which means it has adhesive on all the parts. And that makes it really easy to lay down this thin outline of the fox. Now I can start to fill in with the kraft cardstock that I cut earlier for the head and the body, which I had to adjust that just a little bit. That piece that stuck up kind of moved a little when I put it down. I have these two little legs and then also the main part of his tail. I use some vanilla malt cardstock for the white parts of his face, and also I will use it for the end of his tail. And then I'm using some chocolate bar cardstock for the eyes, which is a slightly darker than the outline. And then for the nose, I cut the outline and then I just trimmed off the pieces so I had just the nose left over. And I'm just adding a little dot of glue, and then I'll just add that nose right on top of the outline. You could also color this with a marker if you wanted to have a little darker nose. And then of course I have some ballet slipper for the inside of the ears. Now for the little baby fox, I'm doing the same thing. So I've got that solid piece covered with that double-sided adhesive. The outline is cut from paper bag cardstock. And then I have my kraft pieces for the top of his head, the main part of the tail, and the body with those two little legs on each side. Then for the face and the end of the tail, I'm using that same cream colored vanilla malt cardstock. And then for the eyes, I have that darker brown chocolate bar cardstock, and you can see there I also have part of the outline for the head cut out, and I'm doing the same thing I did on the first one, which is trimming off the lines that I don't need to where all I have left is that more solid nose. And then just with a dot of glue, I'll just add this little nose to this little baby fox. And you can see how adding that dark nose really kind of helps define that nose a little bit. And now my two little foxes are done. So now let's move on to the card base. I've cut a piece of speckled eggshell cardstock with the largest outside in stitch rectangle, and I have a kraft card base, and I'm using the Just Stitching hearts, and I'll be creating some stitched hearts on this background to go behind my foxes. So I'm just kind of getting the placement. Once I have them where I want, I'm just going to hold it in place with a little bit of tape, run it through my die cut machine, and when I pull that off, you see I have that double stitching of that heart on the cardstock. So I'm going to do the same thing with the small heart. Just hold it in place with a little bit of tape and then run that through the die cut machine so I get that really fun stitched heart on that background piece. Now I'm taking those same dies that I used to cut the stitch hearts, and I'm just tracing them onto a piece of masking paper. So this paper has some low tack adhesive, and we're going to use this to mask off the hearts. And I'll just trim this out with my scissors. And this is going to be slightly larger than that outside stitched heart, so I'll just line that up with the stitching as best I can. It doesn't have to be completely perfect, but as long as it covers up the stitching, I'm going to get the look that I want. So I'll do that for both hearts. And this is just to mask these off so that I do not get any of my stenciled stripes into the hearts. So now that I have my hearts masked off, I'm going to set up my stencil to do some stenciling. And I'm using the Skinny Stripes stencil, and I've got this going vertically. And instead of using my magnets to hold this down, because this is a delicate stencil, I'm going to use tape. And I'm using micropore tape because it's nice and wide. And I can kind of tape over the edge of my stencil and onto my mat. And I also like this tape because it sort of grabs the ink a little bit so you don't get this buildup of ink on the edge where the tape is. And I'm using cracked pistachio distress oxide. And for these stripes, because this is a delicate stencil, I like to make sure that I ink in the direction of the stripes. So I'm just going up and down, making sure I do not go left and right. So I'm moving my ink blending tool around with the stripes. You can see here I'm pulling it from the edge up into the stencil. And I'm just working back and forth till I get everything covered with a layer of this cracked pistachio ink. So you see those fun stripes when I pull that away. And then when I pull off my masks, you'll see that my hearts are still nice and clean. And I'm actually going to make sure that these masks stay together because I'm going to reuse them before I'm done. So I'll just keep these stuck together off to the side until I need them again. Now I'm going in with saltwater taffy distress oxide and just lightly putting some pink inside the heart. And you could make a mask with a negative to make sure you protect this heart from going outside of it with the ink, but I'm just being very careful. I don't want this to be perfect. I just want these hearts to be highlighted with that pink color. So I actually don't want a harsh edge on these, just a nice soft edge with pink inside those stitched hearts. Part of this will get covered up by the little foxes anyway, so I just want to make sure I have the pink at the top. It's going to highlight those foxes when I put them on. And then I wanted to enhance the edges of this a little bit, so I'm going in with some salvaged patina and just inking up the edges. This is also distress oxide. And I just think that this helped define things a little bit, made it look a little more vintage, and just added even more color to that background. So now I'm putting my masks back on, and I can kind of use those stripes as a guide to make sure I have them back in the same place. And I'm going to realign my stencil. But before I do any stenciling with this, I realized I wanted some gold splatters to this background, and I thought it would be best to do that before I put my stencil paste on. So I'm just going to use that tape as a hinge, move that stencil to the side, and use my gold metallic watercolor to add some gold splatters around. And of course, since those masks are on there, I don't have to worry about my splatters being in my hearts. So now all my splatters are dry, I can realign that stripe stencil, and I'm going to be applying some fairy dust stencil paste. So I'm just using my little spatula to get some, and I'm just going to pull this down from the edges, from the top and the bottom, to fill in these stripes, and I'm going to get this really fun, shimmery, clear gloss over top of my cracked pistachio stripes. So I can pull that stencil up. I will immediately go put this in some water so my paste doesn't dry on my stencil. And then I can also pull up the mask. Now I am not worried about reusing these again. They're nice and moist and wet from that stencil paste, so they're kind of useless at this point. So I'm just going to toss these once I pull this up. Now while that paste dries, I'm going to stamp out my sentiment using the Wavy Sayings stamp set. I picked out the one that says, "You're the best," and I have a fancy wavy banner cut from some apricot cardstock. I also have a piece of cardstock that's thicker, and I use that same outside in stitched rectangle, and I'm just laminating this to the back of my panel to give it a little more stability. There's been a lot of ink and a lot of paste put on there, and that's just regular cardstock, not cardstock meant for all that moisture. So that's just going to reinforce it. I put it on a craft card base with some foam tape, and now I'm adding my little sentiment banner along the bottom with some foam squares. Then for my little foxes, that big one, I'm just adding some liquid glue, and I'm tucking it behind that banner at the bottom. And then for the little one, I'm going to add some thin foam squares. So I did full thickness foam squares for the sentiment banner and then thin for this little fox so he can tuck behind that banner. And then I'm using my sparkle glaze to trace around the inside edge of my hearts, just to add some glitter to the hearts and kind of enhance them a little bit and make them stand out. This sparkle glaze and the crystal glaze as well are perfect for tracing lines like this. And then I also felt like it needed just a little more pop of color, so I've cut a bunch of hearts from the Skinny tag with Hearts and Stars die set, as you see there, which has those 3 sizes of hearts. I've just cut these from some guava cardstock, and I'm just sprinkling them around. So I've got 3 inside my heart area, and then I've got 3 outside in the stripes. And I'm just adding those with a little dab of liquid glue. And then here's my finished card, which I just think turned out so adorable. I love those soft colors, and I love those sparkly stripes with the skinny stripe stencil in the background.
Oh my goodness, Shari, I am in love with this card. The stripes and the whole hearts and how you masked everything. Oh, and the sparkles, so pretty and so cute. And next up, we have some incredible cards by the design team. First up, we have a sweet card by Elena, and I love how she added those cute little flowers around her foxes and created a cool little shadow box frame for them. This card by Callie is so pretty. I love the stripes that she created, and I really love those horizontal stripes on a vertical card. I love how Grace created a shadow box card with the tiny little fox and used some of the cute little shadow box critters that we have. By using the flower market paper for the trees, they look like cherry blossoms, and oh my goodness, do I adore this card. This card by Maureen is so much fun. I love her bright colors and how she made it a baby congrats card. This card by Kara is so gorgeous. I love the cool orange colors, and using that little green paper as the grass is so pretty. This is the card by Grace that inspired us to make ours today. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Grace. And this card here by Letitia is so much fun. I love her rainbow stripes and how she used the giant happy spring over top. This card by Audrey is so fun, and it's such a cool way to use the stripes. She used it to create ocean scenes for her cute little shark. And then this platform pop-up by Megan is amazing, and she created her waffle cone texture by using the diagonal stripes and then rotating them to overlay them to create a really cool grid. And I just love this so much. Tammy individually inked all of her stripes to create the coolest pattern, and I just love this color palette. It's perfect for the rub-a-dub-dub ducks. And this card by Elise is so fun. I love how she overlaid them to create a cool stripe pattern with her skinny stripe stencils. And then Lynette's really cute red and yellow color palette is so fun and just perfect for a birthday. And then this is the card by Mindy that inspired us to make ours, and I just love that rainbow stripe background. So we cannot wait to see what you guys create with both Foxy Family and the Skinny Stripe Stencils, so make sure to share it with us. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!